All right, let's jump right in. We're looking at a really fascinating text from the early 20th century that tackles one of the biggest questions out there. Why is the world so full of suffering and, well, disorder? It's a question every single worldview has to deal with, and today we're going to see how the Christian framework, at least as this source lays it out, puts that problem front and center.
The author doesn't pull any punches. They start with this heavy-hitting quote from the philosopher John Stuart Mill. He basically said, look, if you just use reason and look at the natural world, there's no way to make the idea of an all-good, all-powerful God fit with the world we actually experience. It's a really honest and powerful way to kick off the whole discussion.
But here's where the author makes a really key point. They say, look, Christianity didn't invent the problem of evil, it's just a fact of life. But instead of trying to explain it away, Christianity drags it right into the spotlight. And why would it do that? Because at its core, Christianity is a religion of redemption. And that makes sense, right? You can't really have a grand rescue story if there's nothing to be rescued from.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. The text compares the Christian view with what at the time was considered modern thought. Things like evolutionary theory and new philosophies that were coming up. And believe me, where they found common ground is pretty surprising.
The author lays out this really unexpected alliance on 3 big points. First, both sides got really honest about the world. They agreed that just being optimistic for the sake of it is pointless and that the world has some deep, serious problems. Second, they both threw out the idea that people are just naturally good, agreeing instead that there's some kind of fundamental flaw in us. And third, they both got the power of heredity, the idea that we're all connected and we inherit things from the people who came before us.
So, if both the Christian view and this modern view agree that the world's in bad shape and that humanity is flawed, where's the big fight? If they're looking at the exact same symptoms, what's so different about their diagnoses? Well, it all boils down to where the problem started.
And that disagreement, wow, it could not be deeper. It's the Great Divide. Because it's not just about what went wrong, it's about why. And this gets to the absolute heart of what sin is and where this text says it all began.
So, first things first, the text is super clear about its definition here. Sin isn't just a simple mistake or a bad habit. In the Christian view we're exploring, it's a deep violation of reality. It's something that absolutely positively ought not to be. It's framed as a rebellion, a conscious turning of our will away from the divine will.
And this slide just lays out the conflict perfectly. On the left, you've got the Christian view. Our current state is abnormal. It's a tragic fall from a good and pure beginning caused by a free choice. But on the right, the modern view says this is all perfectly normal. It was a necessary, unavoidable step in our evolution from being mere animals. So, is sin a terrible perversion of the way things should be, or was it actually a required part of becoming human? To make the point, the author brings up some specific examples of this modern thought. You had philosophers like Hegel, who saw the fall as just a metaphor for humanity waking up and becoming self-aware. You had theologians like Schleiermacher, who said sin is just our animal senses being stronger than our spirit. And then, of course, evolutionary theorists saw it all as just the leftover instincts from our brutish past. See the pattern here? In every single one of these, sin is just a necessary growing pain.
Okay, so this huge disagreement about where human evil comes from, well, it has massive ripple effects. According to this text, it doesn't just change how we see ourselves, it totally changes how we see the entire natural world.
We've all felt this, right? You look out at nature, and yeah, it's beautiful, but there's also so much violence and suffering. The poet Tennyson just nailed it with that famous line, "Nature red in tooth and claw." The problem isn't just about our moral choices. It seems like chaos is baked right into the system.
And here's where the Christian text finds this incredible echo in Scripture. The author quotes the Apostle Paul, arguing that nature itself isn't in its proper state. It's described as groaning in pain, which suggests that the mess we see in the world isn't just our problem, it's a cosmic problem.
So the text really digs into this. It says creation was subjected to vanity, meaning it was frustrated from its real purpose, like its development was arrested. But the big takeaway here is this idea of solidarity. In this worldview, nature isn't just the stage for the human drama. It's a character in the story, tied up in our fate, dragged down in our fall, and sharing in the same hope for restoration.
All right, let's get to the final piece of the puzzle. This is the point where these two worldviews collide head-on, with no room for compromise. And it's a question that affects every single one of us, the reality of human death.
And the clash here is absolute. The modern view, rooted in biology, says death is perfectly natural. We're animals. Animals die. It's a law of nature, end of story. The biblical view in this text says no way. For humans, death is completely abnormal. It's an intruder, an enemy that only entered the picture as a direct result of sin.
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical argument. Your answer to that question changes everything. If death is natural, then we're basically animals, and maybe our soul goes on, but our body is disposable. Redemption then would just be about the soul. But if death is an unnatural consequence of sin, that means our physical bodies are an essential part of who we are. And that means a real, true redemption has to save the whole person, body and soul. It has to include the resurrection.
And that is the powerful question this text leaves us hanging on. Is death just a natural end to our story, a normal part of life's cycle? Or is it an enemy that needs to be defeated? At the end of the day, the source argues that how you understand the beginning, the origin of sin, is going to completely define how you understand the end and what you believe about our ultimate destiny.